basically a state organization designed to split the state into 3 autonomous regions. We always start our meetings with a prayer and then a pledge of allegiance. Unfortunately, the nearest flag is out of sight over at City Hall in that direction, so we'll turn that way when we do the pledge. And I'm going to defer to Stephanie to do our opening prayer.
Thank you guys so much for coming. This is really, can everybody hear me? No. Okay. Thank you guys so much for coming. It's really important that you guys are here today. Many of you are here because I've met you or came across you from different causes that you're fighting for, whether it be for 2A or medical freedom or our kids. This is a huge answer to our problems, and we want to show you how we can get this done. So with that in mind, I want to start in prayer, and I want to say, Father, please bless this meeting and the people who are here gathered today to have an open mind and an open heart in a time where we really don't know what to do about the current state of affairs in our government. We look to you for direction and guidance, and we ask that you please be with us during this meeting. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Now, for the pledge, we'll have to face that way. You'll have to imagine you can see the flag. I wish I brought my little desk flag, but I didn't think to do it this time. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I'm all set with my spiel that I wanted to tell to you guys about what I was bringing you guys together for. But most importantly is our Assemblyman David DiPietro, who has wrote the bill for, it's Assembly Bill 04446. He's the sponsor on this bill, and it's to divide New York into 3 autonomous regions. And I'm going to give it over to him so he can he can tell you all that you need to know about that. We're going to give a quick presentation, and then there will be time for us to ask questions and talk after.
Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I was going to say there are some seats up front if you want to come up. Plenty of room, so I'm not screening. I'm David DiPietro. I'm the New York State Assemblyman in the 147th District, which is south of Buffalo and east. So I have all of Wyoming County and I have all of southern Erie. So I don't have Buffalo, I don't have the populated part, I have the rural area. East Aurora, Elma, Marilla, Wales. I don't know if you ever heard of those, Holland. I have all of Wyoming County. Wyoming County is the #1 dairy producer in the state. County-wise, there are actually more cows than people in Wyoming County. That's a fact. There's about 60-some thousand cows and about 35,000 people. So, very agricultural, very rural. My district runs about 100 miles. It's one of the biggest districts in the state, east to west. It's pretty square. That's not going to stay that way, just so you know, which I'll be talking about towards the end, but I am the #1 target in New York State for the Democrats and the liberals, just so you know. A little bit, I've been the Conservative of the Year 5 years, 5 times, 3 in a row. This year I was the only elected official in the state to get a 100% conservative rating from the New York State Conservative. I've been Conservative of the Year from the national organization, the American Conservative Union, 7 times in my 8 years. And the only time I missed it was because I was sick and I missed a few days in Albany and missed some votes. So that's been, that's Matt Schlapp's group. It's nationwide. I'm very honored on that one. Just to give you that background so that you get a little bit of feel of who I am, what I'm doing. I put God, Jesus Christ in front of everything. I'm born again Christian, and I have no problem telling everyone that. Some people don't want to hear it, and I say, well, that's up to you. But that's where my faith comes in to give me the backbone in Albany to fight the corruption. I just hope if you get to know me, you know that I don't go up to Albany to get along, go along to get along like most people do. I do not kowtow to Democrats. The ones that I could work with across the aisle, the moderates, so to speak, who've been there forever. When I have a bill that goes across the aisle, just so you know, they got wiped out this year in the primaries. AOC ran 7 of her people, all registered with the Communist Party in the United States, against 7 of the most moderate, who she called, quote unquote, old white men, but she took out a black and Hispanic also, because they were too conservative. She won 6 out of the 7 races. She also won Senate races. So I tell people now, and I'm in all sincerity, the communists are running New York State. So just I always give a little background. There's 150 assembly people throughout the state by population. Out of that 150, obviously 75 is the dividing line for votes. Out of the 150, there's 107 Democrats, 43 Republicans. We're in the super minority. But I bring those numbers up, because out of the 107 Democrats, 82 are from New York City. They control everything that goes on in this state. And I want to make that clear. Let me repeat that. New York City controls everything, not something, some things, everything that goes on. In Western New York, in Buffalo, in the city of Buffalo, Crystal Peoples-Stokes, who I know really well, she became the first floor leader woman, African-American, in the history of New York. She's probably the 3rd or 4th most powerful woman in the state. She cannot get her legislation to the floor unless New York City vets it and says it's okay. Out of those 82 in New York City, about 20 of them are full-blown communists. Another 20 are socialists. And they run the show. The moderates have been crushed, are gone. Every one of them. I look across the aisle, I don't even know who I can talk to anymore. I don't know who I can bring in my legislation if I want to get it passed. Just so you know, there hasn't been a statewide bill on the board to be voted on in over 40 years because they control every bill that goes up there. I tell people my job as a Republican, all of our jobs are to vote on Democrat bills every day. So when you get the media telling you this passed or this was up, it has nothing to do with Republicans. Those are all Democrat bills. Does that make sense? Do you understand that? Yeah. Okay. So that's my job. I vote on Democrat bills every day. We did over 600 last week at the end of session. We do about 12 to 1,400 a year, all Democrat bills. It used to be one House bills. That meant to become a law, it has to be an assembly bill. The exact same bill has to be taken by a senator, pass both houses, then the governor goes to the governor. When the Republicans controlled the Senate 2 years ago, all these bills had no Senate sponsors because the Republicans were in the majority. We called them one house wonders because we would spend all day voting on bills with no Senate sponsors. And as soon as we debated them and they made the news, they got thrown in the garbage. So they were voted on, they got thrown in the garbage. There's no Senate sponsors. So we wasted our time. That, for the first 8 years, 7 years, I just wasted my time. We all did. We just voted on it, most of those bills. Now that the Senate's been taken over by the Democrats, another supermajority, we've got blown out. All of these 1,200 bills or more have Democrat Senate sponsors. Out of those 600, at least I'd say 400. Now, if the governor doesn't veto them, they become law.
Oh, we know that.
Yeah, and they're all...
We've tried calling the police on the Assemblyman, and it's all downstate and you're controlling.
That's
Don't
right.
listen to anybody. It goes through one ear and out the other.
That's right. But I tell people, you know what, the Democrats, when they come back into my district, they all beat their chest. And I say, did you say one word on the floor against any of these bills? There's a guy named Rivera who was a freshman from Hamburg, which is right next door to me, just got elected. I didn't even know who he was until Thursday, our last day in session, when his name was on a bill. He got his first home rule bill passed. They gave him a round of applause. I didn't even know who he was. I'd never seen him, never heard of him, because he never once stood up on the floor and talked about anything, pro or con. But he'll come back to his district and say, you know what, I'm against this. Well, you voted for it. You voted for everything the New York City liberals put on the floor. You're no better. And you never once argued on the floor to say, hey, you know what, maybe we should take a look at this. And that's what they do. They're told to sit down and shut up or they lose everything. So I don't know who you have here. But I can guarantee you, if they come out and say they're fighting for something that the majority is pushing, they're full of baloney. Okay? They're full of baloney because they never once stood up on the floor. I've never heard one Democrat ever this whole year stand up and say, you know what, this isn't a great bill. I'm not for this. You know, say it on the floor. Maybe they said it in conference, but who cares? We want to see it in public. I want to see you come out here and do a press conference against full-term abortion. I want to see you come out and do a press conference because they don't. So they're allowed to I'm giving you the background of Albany. Very frustrating this year. Very frustrating. Everything that came up passed. Normally, like I said, it's a one-house wonder. Not anymore, folks. These are all laws coming through. Okay, this whole climate change bill that's going to cost $500 billion maybe. It's wiping businesses out, whether you have to. Okay, number one, you cannot stop an airborne infectious disease. But they want every business to retrofit with new systems. Everybody. Even if you work out of your home, if you have one part-time employee who works 1 hour a week, you have to retrofit. And that's a friend of mine has a debt service business. He's got about 100,000 square foot building. He's got 1,000 plus employees in Buffalo, which is huge. And he called me up 2 weeks ago and he said, Dave, our engineers and our attorneys went through this bill that's coming up next year. It's law, right? It's passed and the state's working on the specs. He says, we can't do this. It's going to cost us $750,000 to $1 million plus to retrofit. He says, plus, in that bill, every employee can sue the business for $25,000. Meaning, let's say you don't have the right language in the bathroom, the right whatever it is that the state comes up with, and you don't have it posted, somebody tore it down. I didn't see it, I'm suing you. He says, we can't afford 1,000 people suing us for $25,000. Georgia, they're gone. Okay? The state just cost us 1,000 jobs in Buffalo. We can't afford 10 jobs in Buffalo, but they're all leaving. Now I could go on and on about how the census was totally corrupted by like 1 million people this year. They lied. And if you think I'm harsh, I am. Because I just sit up here and I'll tell you the truth. And a lot of people don't want to hear the truth. They want to stick their head in the sand and say, hey, you know what? Life's good. New York sucks. I'm sorry. And Democrats are professional. Give me the list of the things since I've been in Albany 9 years. Name me the list of things that they've done, that they championed, that have made it better, that have brought people back to the state, that have made our plumb line and our morals even better, that have helped our children grow to be better people. I can't name any. Full-term abortion? Really? Gun laws that have arrested thousands of innocent, just law-abiding people. A 79-year-old guy in my district got arrested because he had a stupid cartridge in his trunk. Never been arrested, never had a speeding ticket, nothing. Now he's a felon. And it took him a year and over $20,000 to clear his name. For nothing, because of that SAFE Act. So I get a little upset and I get a little passionate, but my goal to come out here 2.5 hours is to make you understand that the time to fight is now. The time to get into people's faces is now. The time to take the state back is now. It's not the time to sit there and be really nice to people and call your elected official and say, you know, I'd really like you to look at this, and if you're talking to a staffer, because they're going to hang up, that message will go nowhere.
Yes.
Nowhere. Don't send an email. Goes nowhere, goes in the garbage. Let me tell you. I know it, I see it.
Are they still letting people in the Capitol to advocate for weeks?
No, Capitol is still closed.
Oh, that was
So I just wanted to give you this quick heads up before we get into Divide New York, because I talked to John, I worked with John. He's the one that turned me on. When I had this idea, I didn't know the idea was already out there. We met, we got together, we brainstormed, we put this thing together, and people want to know, can it happen? Yes, it can.
Yes.
How is it going to happen? Let's go through it. But let's also go through the psychological ways and how we have to make this happen, because it's going to take, remember, Democrats control everything. We have to turn the hearts and minds of Democrats in New York City, and I think we can, and I'll tell you why. So let's go through, I'm going to go through the slides quickly. You can get this online. Staff will have it, has the link if you want it, right? You can give it over, you can look at them. This was put together. This isn't the final. This is the draft. We've tweaked it a little bit, but by no means is this the end game. Even the names of the regions, anything can be changed, and we're always looking for ideas. So if you have any, put them in writings, because I'll forget them. You tell me here. By the time I get to my car, I'll be like, who was that? So let us know, and let's just go through them. So, all right. Can you see that? Once upon a time, upstate New York had major economic-based manufacturing jobs. Now those jobs are moving out of the state. Most counties in upstate have lost population. Where I'm from, leads the nation in brain drain, unnecessary, burdensome regulations mandated by New York City are restricting rights and driving businesses out of upstate. There is no storybook ending. Where I'm from in Erie County, the #1 county, literally for 20 years in out-migration. When the city, when the region had 1.3 million people in Erie County, years ago, we're down to about 400,000. Okay, it's desolate. There's over, I want to say 25 million square feet of retail business open. It's huge, whatever that number is, it's huge. Everywhere you go. I have one. I have a small plaza with 2 stores. They're both vacant. I haven't had anyone look to rent those in 18 months. It's just, there's nothing there. There's no business. In retail, those stores they're giving them away. They want you, they'll give you free rent just to pay the utilities. Okay? It's really bad. And you guys see it up here. Syracuse isn't much better.
It's a lot up here.
So, now this is 2014. This has changed for the worse for us. Okay, but these are just some statistics. Income. Okay, we compared it to Susquehanna County and PA, which is comparable, and the savings if you moved. Okay, if you can see that, the savings, all the different savings. It's a lot more now, especially with minimum wage at $12.50 and $15. The savings now to move on your tax as a business person, as a homeowner, are a lot more. But these were the last stats we had a couple of years ago when we put this together. Go ahead, Jen. A comparison of small business expenses between New York and Pennsylvania. I was a dry cleaner. My dad started in 1949. I grew up in it when I was born in 60. Okay, so when I was a kid, I was crawling around, helping out. I took over the business in 1989. I sold it 2 years ago. Luckily, got out before all this happened, because I'd be bankrupt. I sold it. I've done small business. I could tell you horror stories about me having to work with the state. Dry cleaners, one of the most regulated businesses. The most regulated dry cleaning industry is in New York State, in the entire country. #2, most regulations are in New York State, and #1, I think, is the Netherlands. Nobody, I go to Pennsylvania. Myself, I would save, if I moved my business to Pennsylvania, I would save like $18,000 a year just by moving across the border from New York to Pennsylvania. So I know when it comes to small business, I'm also the ranker for the Small Business Committee in Albany on the Republican side for the state. So all small business factions go to me because of my experience, just FYI. So these are some from payroll taxes, data processing, taxes and license. This is in 2014. It's gotten a lot worse in 7 years. Trust me, a lot worse. And these are the savings right here. Yeah, my 18,000 was in 2014. I never updated after that. I gotta say, if I was in that business and moved, it'd be in the 30s right now, that small business. So, our succession plan calls for establishing a more Republican form of government than the strange form of democracy New York State currently has, which allows downstate to rule upstate, which destroys good-paying jobs. There was a time, I think about 35, 40 years ago, something like that, where, I don't know the exact date, where the representation in New York State in the Senate, one senator per county. It wasn't by population. It was by county. And so the Democrats in New York City screamed until they got a Democrat governor, and then they changed that to go by population. And then as soon as that happened, we lost everything. Obviously, New York City controls everything, and that's where then the fight was on. But when we had one senator per county, that's why we have like 63 senators. We dominated, so New York City didn't control us. And if you go back into the 50s and the 60s, we were the Empire State. New York City was the Big Apple. Okay? We're not even in the top 5 of states for anything anymore. And New York City's the rotten apple. We'll get into that. So, we would partition New York State into 3 autonomous regions, which you see, you know. The New Amsterdam Regional Government, that's us, would have the power to repeal unnecessary regulations and bad laws that are killing up state. A token state government will remain to comply with the U.S. Constitution. The legislative body that remains would have about the same power as the Queen of England because we're forming regions, not a new state, or moving counties between states. Congress can be legally bypassed. Our autonomous regions method will succeed. That's a mouthful, so let's explain that. A lot of people, a bunch of years ago, were always talking, let's split the state, let's make a new state. If you go back a year, okay, a year or so ago, there was no flavor in the country, I told people, to make a 51st state. The United States government had no inclination of putting another 51st star on the flag, making another state, changing everything. So the autonomous region that we're going to do, we can do that right through the state constitution, just like we did the Constitutional Convention 2 years ago. If you remember the Con, okay, remember that? It came up 1 year, it had to pass, it comes back up the second year, and as soon as it passes, we split. Okay? Now that has to be, each year, it has to be voted on by the Assembly and the Senate and the governor. And that's where the fight comes in. Okay, but that's how it would work. It's very simple, but it's not. So there was no way to go into the states because the federal government, that would change everything. But, what have you heard about in the last year? DC, Puerto Rico. So they can get 2 and then 4 more U.S. senators, right, to swamp the Senate. Some more Congress people to swamp to go with Congress. It's all politics. So what Chuck Schumer, of all people, said he would look into dividing New York. He's full of baloney, he never will. But he said that because he wanted to throw a bone to people like us to say, I'm going to look at it. Okay, take a hike, Chuck. He's not. But that was his way of saying, I'm bipartisan. I'm looking at New York, but let's get Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. in first. Let's do that, then we'll look. And you know what happens then, right? Nothing, absolutely, he won't. Okay, again, he's a professional liar. Yep. Democrats are professional liars. Now, I'm sorry if you're a Democrat in here, you're probably not. And, if you want to get into a debate, if you align with AOC and Nancy Pelosi and Obama, if you're in the New York City communists, if you align with them, God bless you. Okay, I love to debate you. But most of the Democrats I run into and friends of mine are moderates. They don't like those people. And they sit there and go, wow, that's not my party. But they stay registered. But it's not their party. That's not their ideal because that's what the party's become. So, again, I'm very blunt. I call it out. I hope you don't mind. I'm a little fired up. So, let's get through these slides because there's going to be a lot of questions. So the New York region would consist of the counties. This is New York City area. Bronx, Kings, which is Brooklyn, New York, Queens, Westchester, and Richmond. Okay, we put Westchester. Westchester originally was in the Long Island region, but the people of Long Island, originally, when I first thought this, was just divided into 2, right? Get rid of New York City. And the Long Island people came to me when I first wrote it up and they said, Dave, we don't want anything in New York to do with New York City either. Get us out of here. Okay, so we made 3 regions. Then Long Island said, we don't want Westchester. Westchester's a liberal haven. They're just a microcosm of New York City. So we said, oh, you're right. We looked at it. We put Westchester and Richmond in with New York City. Okay? Let them all have their own state. I will predict if this happens, that region in less than 5 years will be done. Totally bankrupt. Totally bankrupt. There's no money. Okay? And that's another thing I want to talk about, the money, how we do this. But let's keep going. All right. While the approval of both Congress and state is needed to divide into 2 states, we just talked about this, an amendment to our state constitution is all that is needed to divide our state into autonomous regions. It's almost the same as being separate states, since Congress is unlikely to give the Northeast 2 more states with Senate districts. We just talked about that. So our region, again, I think our plan is the most palatable and easiest. Okay, we're forming autonomous regions, okay? Not a new state. Some of the more expensive aspects of government are being left at the token state level. The boundaries of the region are drawn to ensure that each has enough income to support itself, plus local government and school districts are being freed from the many unfunded mandates that force local property taxes to be the highest in the nation. The highest in the nation, year after year. Democrat control. Have they done one thing to stop taxes, to stop your property taxes? No, they just keep going up because of all their unfunded mandates, and they're holier than thou. We know what's best for you, especially in New York City. The arrogance drips off the walls in Albany. You fight them on the floor. I'm going to tell you this because I've had it said to my face. You go against some of their bills, you come up with a cognitive argument, it doesn't matter. You're a racist. And that, no, I'm serious, and that floors me. That floors me, okay? I don't have to defend myself on that absurd charge, but that's where it is, and that's where this country is today too, on a small side, okay? No more is there, like in New York, no more is there like a give and take of discussion. If you don't agree with them, you're shut out because they have total control and they run over you. They don't care. They don't listen. You're nothing. And I'm being dead serious. And because I tell you this, and I tell people this everywhere I go, the truth, I won't be here probably in 16 months. They'll redistrict me right into it. But I've got 16 months to go, so that's what I look at. Keep going. The overall state laws will be limited to those related to executive. That's the state. Native American. These are, when we divide, we still have to stay a state and meet as elected officials to take care of statewide federal issues. Okay, we don't have sovereignty like over Native Americans, okay? Our region's not going to have that. That's a federal issue, plain and simple. We will deal with it at a state level. The executive for the state, legislative, state only, the National Guard, retirement and Social Security, those are federal, and the state has a retirement system. So all 3 regions are going to have to comply with that. We can't change it when we go. We just start doing different things to the pension. Okay, the administrative procedure, state finance for the state, civil service, state employees, the Court of Appeals, that's at the state level, the Court of Claims, and state judicial conduct. Okay, so we'll get into that, but does that sort of make sense when we split? Okay. The rest of the laws, which make them about 75%, they become regional, and we have total control. Okay, so in our region, let's say it's more conservative. Okay, these are just some of the things we can get rid of automatically. Maybe we don't. Maybe the state, the region says, no, we want to keep all these things. But I'm just saying, these are some of the laws and a bunch of our views, which we wipe out right away, and we save the state, our region, billions of dollars. Safe Act, Common Core, forced vaccinations, which I want to talk about that, full-term abortion, bail reform, farm bill, fracking, go on and on and on. Going. Next. okay? The government structure. The regions are still going to stay divided by population. So like the senators and assembly people you have now by population will all stay. But when the regions are separated, let's say we're all in the New Amsterdam region, we might have 20 senators and 30, 40 assembly people. That'll stay that way for our region. You just look at the counties and you look at the map, and that's where it'll be. The New York City will still have 82 assembly people, and they'll still swamp it, and they'll have their senators that'll still swamp it, and then Long Island, that area. So it's just so you get a feel, that's how it's going to be divided, but we're not adding any more senators, we're not adding any more assembly people, we're not taking away any people, we're going to still stay there. The only thing we're going to do is we will have a regional governor, we'll have our own governor, our own lieutenant governor, our own secretary of state, and the regional governor is going to appoint most of those officials, including our own education commissioner. Secretary of State appoints the regional attorney general, DMV, okay? And and the comptroller. Those are some of the things we will have. Go ahead, John. We're almost done, folks. In order to prevent opposition to the region's plan, the transfer of state departments, agency employees, and regional departments, the pension system, these all remain the same. New York, Montauk would still pay for their residents attending New Amsterdam's regional colleges and vice versa. So the college system will still supply, we still pay for them, they pay for us. That's going to say some prisons will be owned by New York or the Montauk region. The prison system is a different ballgame, okay? We've got to adhere to some state and federal issues on that one. Local government ownership rights are not affected. So New York City retains ownership of its water system. God bless them. Most of the powers of the Court of Appeals, power are transferred to each newly created court, Superior Court. So, keep going. Next. Education. Huge. Talk to any school superintendent in your rural districts, even in some of the cities like Syracuse, and they'll tell you the unfunded mandates that come out of state ed and New York City are crushing. My district is rural. I hear it every day. Dave, this has nothing to do with us. This has nothing to do with our school and our kids. This is a New York City program. It's going to cost us $150,000 or whatever for nothing. We get nothing for it. But that's the mindset of what we're dealing with, especially in New York City. And especially at state ed. One size fits all. The governor has said it many times. He wants education controlled from Albany. One size fits all, socialist education. End of story. It doesn't work. Never has. But when you're a communist, that's your God. That's what you look to. You look to do that. And that's what we're getting right now. So, the school funding formula, yep, okay, where do we begin? There are two methods to amend the Constitution to divide our state, okay? The State Constitution Convention, that's every 20 years, we just had it, throw that out. We're not going to wait another 18 years to have a State Constitution Convention. And then the Home Rule Resolution. This is it. So, what we need to do, let's start with a game plan. Is that the last slide, John?
No, it's a few more.
There's one after.
Okay, go ahead to that, because we'll talk about this one.
This is just the end.
Okay. So, that's the slideshow. I want to get through it quick because there's going to be a lot of questions, and I want to just confront them and how we do this. So let's go right to the nitty-gritty. First of all, pure, raw politics. New York City is a dumpster fire. It's a tire fire. It's horrible. I get about 30 papers online a day. The New York Post, the New York Times, the, what's the other one down there? The Daily News, whatever, okay? And every day, okay, if you go, let's go to the MTA, the subway system. First off, it's been broke for a number of years. Three years ago, they said they needed $60 billion. That estimate now has gone to $100 billion. There's no money. They can't borrow it. There's no money. People are getting slashed on the MTA every day, sometimes 8, 10 people. The gangs go through, and it's called slashing. And they go through, and they'll just walk through, something, they'll have a knife and go like this and slash it, wherever, in your face, in your chest, whatever. About once or twice a week or whatever, they are throwing people off the subway into in front of the train. That's a gang thing too. Homeless, but a lot of times they go in the crowd in the morning, afternoon commute, and they'll come up push bursts right in front of the train. It's bad. So much so that the Democrats in the Assembly just last week put a bill and passed it that said the MTA and New York State have to provide big posters in the subway system on what to do when someone gets hit or thrown into the train. How to rescue. I'm dead serious. We just passed this. On how to rescue someone that's been thrown into the tracks. Like I said, this is New York City. My daughter is 14. It gets me upset. She wants to go to New York City. And I try to explain this to her. Remember Rick Moranis from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and SDT? Okay, I don't know if you heard that last year during COVID, whatever. He's walking back to his apartment by himself. A guy's coming this way by himself. And, Rick's got a hat. You can't tell who it is. He's got an overcoat. It's wintertime. Guy, while he's walking, the guy just, boom, punches him, knocks his face in. He's in the hospital. And that's happening dozens of times, sometimes in one day. The murder is through the roof. It's rivaling Chicago. Crime has more than tripled in New York City. It's out of control. It's a dumpster fire. But that's what you get when you've got a communist mayor, a socialist governor, you've got a city council, which I think I'm going to guess, I think has 62 members on this New York City Council. Out of the 62, 60 are Democrats. There's 2 Republicans from Staten Island. Joe Borelli, who sat next to me, left the assembly and became a city councilman. They get whatever they want. They're in debt, out of control. There's no money. What we just did in the budget this year was they took the money from, let's go back. And here's why this was ready to go in November. Okay? Raw politics. If Trump would have won, and I talked to him, Trump would not have funded New York State except for the COVID. He says, he said it many times, I'm not going to bail out your horrendous mistakes. Your budget's over budget, $5 to $8 billion the last couple of years. You're raising taxes. That's your fault. That's not Illinois', that's not Florida's fault, that's not Georgia's fault, that's not Oklahoma's fault. Why should they pay their taxes in the federal government to give to New York? So when Trump got in, I was working with someone at the White House with this to say, look, don't fund New York except for COVID, because then New York City goes broke. It's over. The state's over. We're $5-6 billion in the hole this year. And there's no way you're going to raise taxes, even though they just did. And you're going to feel it in January, folks. You're going to start feeling this. This is not a year and a half ago when we raised them $1.1 billion and people fled out of the state, the businesses. Now you're going to raise them $5 or $6 billion. It's going to get really ugly. And put that in with the business mandates and everything they've done. Okay? The people that left this year is going to look like a trickle compared to what happens next year. So if they didn't get funded, New York City would be on the hook. Where are they going to make up that money? Well, what they tell me on the floor is we welfare, that's the term, welfare the rest of the state from all our corporations in the city. We welfare the rest of the state about $12 to $16 billion that goes in the treasury and gets dispersed. And so, very simple, keep it. Give us autonomy, keep your money. Wow. Carrot, right? A lot of them, a couple of Democrats I talked to were like, eyes open up. I said, really? And literally they said, we don't give a crap about you guys anyway. Seriously, that's the attitude. So I said, keep your money. But and I'm telling you, the governor, since last spring, was on his knees praying, he doesn't pray, on his knees every day hoping that Biden would win. The only way New York State was going to get out of this mess, because they had no answers, was for Biden to win. Biden wins. That's why he was kissing his butt every day, because Biden was going to give him $15–20 billion. Not only for COVID, but for everything else. Get him out of the hole. So what happened? I've been there 9 years. Our budget usually goes up because of the Democrat spending in New York City. Goes up a couple billion, $3–4 billion of the budget, $5 billion maybe. What did they do this year? All their programs, now that they've got control, they've got supermajority control in both houses. Did you see what they spent? Does anybody know how much the budget went up this year? $22 billion. What was it last year? 190, 189, now it's 212 or 210? It's a joke. The economists have said next year, we start, because there's no revenue to support this, all their programs in the city. They're giving away, I hope you guys all understand, they put in the budget $2.2 billion for what in New York City? Anybody? To give illegal immigrants a $13,200 check. Did you not read that? $13,200 or $400 for illegal immigrants. $2 billion. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so under the exchanges, there's an essential plan, and the essential plan is basically undocumented, illegal, or foreigners just visiting, a whole year's worth of health insurance for zero. Zero cost.
That's right.
Can we get to that in a minute so we can talk about the home rule resolution?
What's that?
Let's do the questions in a minute after her.
Okay, yeah, okay. Yeah, we're going to get to that too. But I just want to give you this, how we're going to do this. So, next year we start about $5–6 billion in the hole. So their answer is tax to rich, which they just did again. And the governor, if you remember, came out about 8–9 months ago, a couple times, said, you can't do that anymore. They're all gone, they're all leaving. And the Democrats said, we don't care, we're going to tax them anyway. I was like, you can't do that. They're all leaving. They're like, we don't care. And they passed it anyway. So what happened? I know, not personally, but it was in the paper, 3 multi-billionaires in the city said, taking my company, we're going to Connecticut. We're out of here. And that's just what they did. It goes back to years ago when they were trying, again, revenue, trying to find money. They said, we're going to tax, there's some small airports around New York City where the executives would fly in to New York, right? To the city, the private jets, the multi-billionaires, whatever. They said, well, let's tax these airports. Let's tax them so we can get the revenue. They're all flying in. And they're like, no, you tax them, they're going to dry up and they're going to go, no, they're not. We're going to, what happened? Every one of those airports, they moved to Connecticut. They went across the river, they moved to Connecticut. There's no tax revenue. I mean, but that's what they do. They don't have the wherewithal. So let's, I hope I've given you a little bit. So that's, like I said, so next year, once we get to January, 6 months, where this program, I think, would have been going county to county, which was our goal, try and get county legislatures in each county, like the SAFE Act, to say, hey, look, we support this plan. Just like when they, 9 years ago, when they were against the SAFE Act, every county after county said, we are opposed to the SAFE Act. That's how we start this. We put pressure on our county legislators and say, we support dividing the state. We want to do the study. Assemblyman Steve Hawley, who I work with from Batavia, has the bill to do the study. They go hand in hand. Let's do the study. We can do that in 6 months, seriously, but start the process in splitting, dividing. But we got to go county to county. In January, well, actually in probably October, November, the governor's going to come out with his preliminary budget. We're already, depending on how much they keep from all that money that the feds gave them to try and help out next year, they're predicting another $5–6 billion hole. How can you do that when we just got all that money from the federal government? It's because they're spending it all. They do not look at the bottom line, okay? I don't want to go into that. You guys all know how budgets work with Democrats. So I think in January, we're really going to start up in earnest. I mean, right now, I think the goal is to get the county by county going. send the shot across the bow, like the SAFE Act, get people talking about it, literally talking about and getting into the nuts and bolts, but then in January, start pushing it in earnest, going January through June next year, depending on how they manipulate that budget. Because New York City is not getting better. I don't care what they tell you. New York City is not getting out from under the hole. The governor, remember when he said, come on back to New York City. I'll buy you lunch. I'll buy you a drink. Remember that? A year ago? They're not. They've picked up and they've left. They're gone. Manhattan, even though they've opened up, 50% of Fifth Avenue is still closed, boarded up. There's going to be that revenue, they're losing a lot of revenue in New York City. So this is where we've got a chance. So I think I've gone a little long on explanation. I'm really trying to get everybody on board to see how it can happen. Again, we've got to make sure New York City, they're going to be bankrupt. I think in a year, there's just no way they can continue with the spending. The first time, here's the tale, 3 years ago, it started. I was sitting next to some Democrats and talking to them. They were amazed at how many people were leaving Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, the suburbs. They've never experienced out-migration. A lot of their laws they say exempt cities over a million. That's just New York City. So they'll put up a law, but they exempt New York City. They exempt themselves. They give it to us. A lot of DMV laws, a lot of tax laws exempt cities over a million. The brain drain is going out in New York City now. They're leaving in droves, just like we see it. And they don't know what to do. So this is where now they're experiencing what we're experiencing. The money, I don't know where that money is going to come from. I mean, they just raised that budget. How many billions and billions and billions of dollars? They borrowed to the max. Look around. How many projects from that budget have your elected representatives come out and done press conferences? Big money coming into Syracuse. New York City took it all, folks. They took it all. It's a joke. In Western New York, the elected officials, the senators, we got nothing. We got nothing. We didn't bring anything back this year. Not that that's our job, but the fact is it's not fair. When you raise all that money and you take every penny of it. So, enough on that. Let's get to some questions. Anybody? Yeah.
Will Bartlett, Minority Left, where's he stand on all this?
He's with us.
I had emailed them, the staff has researched and said that they're in support of it, but I don't see any postmark. They're doing a panic pitch there. It's our state senator.
Right.
But I haven't seen him on here. He's Minority Left.
Well, he'll get on it. Brian Cole, who was the previous leader, Brian was on it. I don't think Will's been, maybe you've approached him. I haven't really talked to him. I haven't sat down with Will on this at all.
He says he's in support of the bill, which I'm assuming is the same as the previously offered bill, but I haven't seen him on it. I've sent several emails and got responses, but I haven't seen him put his name and paper on it.
I think with him, because he's ours as well. I think he's pushing it on and if we get done on the board, I'll be on it. He is questionable, in my opinion. He's very questionable.
You talk to him, don't you?
Yeah.
What kind of person is he? Because obviously we don't have any type of dialogue with him per se. Is he straight up or is he just playing off of his dad when his dad should be the master?
Here's the thing. Well, I ran for the leadership spot, not to get it, but to make changes more conservative. And I talked to Will, because Will was with Brian Cole, the previous, I'm just telling you, this is inside baseball. Brian Cole, who was a previous leader, was not a fan. We clashed heads in the last couple of years. I don't know why. Maybe I was too conservative. I don't know. Brian seemed like he was semi-conservative. When Will got in, I said, Will, these are the things. I'm running, but, you know, I don't really want to be the leader, but I want to see some changes. If you're going to be the leader, I want to see these changes.
The reason that we're here is for a home rule resolution and how this is going to be passed. I did the initial drawing board. I've contacted all of the Republican majority legislators, meaning counties that we have here. We have, even though Onondaga County's blue,